am excited to share with you today our first session, which includes energy-related economic development success stories. Our second session will focus again on economic development, but through the perspective of our utility partners. Next, we'll get a legislative and regulatory update, both on the state, and I'm sure for many of you, even more important due to the recent announcements, the federal level. And we'll close the day out with a session on workforce development in the energy sector. Travis will thank you for your help here today. Definitely, you see Travis around, give him a thanks. So first up, we have the session on economic development success stories, including case studies focused on energy-related economic development happening here in Missouri. And we're happy to be able to bring to you two leaders and two companies that in 2021 have made some positive and exciting announcements. Let me introduce our first speakers. We have John Deal, General Counsel of the Missouri Cobalt. John is the General Counsel, has over 30 years experience in all aspects of land development, including environmental risk transfer projects, working with owners and community stakeholders in land use processing, developing incentives, clean energy, clean tech projects as well. The Missouri Cobalt Project is the first of its kind, a risk transfer project relating to a mine asset being reopened for productive use and has been recognized by the United States Environmental Protection Agency as a model project. John, take it away.
I'm unmuted and it says I cannot. Do you want me to turn my video on, Josh, or?
Yes, sir. If you can, that'd be great.
There we go. There we go. Very good. Right. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to present to this group. As Josh mentioned, I serve a couple roles with Missouri Cobalt. One, I'm General Counsel. I'm also on the company's board of directors and also a shareholder in the company as one of the founders. And we're really excited about this project, and we think it puts Missouri in the driver's seat on supply chains for what we're seeing right now is the EV boom in the country, and by all indications, that EV boom is going to continue unabated. It's anticipated that between now and 2040, there's going to be a 35-fold increase in electric vehicles in this country. And you can also see that through some of the government priorities that are in place. I know the current administration has promised to advance electric vehicles, not only through incentives through the various legislation, but also to convert the entire government's fleet to electric. We believe every US-made bus will be electric vehicle by the year 2030. And also the country and many states have pledged a lot of money and programs to build up to 500,000 new electric chargers, electric charging stations over the next decade. And we believe that there's also been proposed infrastructure plans to up to $170 billion to boost the domestic electric vehicle market. And this is something that's not only unique to the United States, but as everyone knows, also unique to many of our allies in Europe and other places. And we'll play into that here in a second on why this project is important. There's also been announcements by every major OEM to commit to electric vehicles, from Hyundai, Volkswagen, General Motors, Kia, Ford, and Fiat Chrysler have all made major announcements in the past year about significantly transitioning their fleet to electric vehicles. And what's interesting is that electric vehicles, one of the key components to electric vehicles is cobalt. And there's frankly a very challenged cobalt supply chain in the world. About 70% of the cobalt mined in the world originates in the Democratic Republic of Congo. with up to 30% of it attributed to artisanal mines, which for those of you who don't know, artisanal mines are often mined with child slave labor, have very little regard for environmental conditions, and that severely limits the availability of ethically sourced product. About greater than 85% of the global chemical production is handled by China. And we all know with those ongoing geopolitical tensions, the potential disruption in global supply chains, which can occur. And less than 5% of the cobalt supply in the world occurs with cobalt as a primary product. So most of the cobalt that's right now sourced and produced in the world is dependent upon cobalt that can be recovered as part of the mining and processing of other metals such as nickel and copper. Such as nickel and copper, which makes cobalt also subject to the fluctuations of that market. So all these things with the growing demand for EV and the challenged cobalt supply chains, there's a prediction of long-term deficit in the cobalt market. And the United States and our Western European allies are particularly challenged by this because of the somewhat of a chokehold that the Chinese have on the overall process. And this is kind of where Missouri Cobalt comes in, and it's a very interesting project. For those of you who don't know, our site is located in Madison County, Missouri, which is about 80 miles south of St. Louis, and it's just outside the city limits of Fredericktown. Well, actually, we're annexed into Fredericktown, so I can say we're in Fredericktown now. And it's also part of a Madison County Mines EPA Superfund site, which includes all of Madison County. And so this is a site that's been around for well over 100 years. Mining at the site began in the mid-1840s, and it's continued intermittently since then. This site in the past has primarily produced lead, and it was owned by companies such as National Lead Company and others, although over the years there has been intermittent mining of copper, cobalt, nickel, iron, and a few other metals. We acquired the site as part of a Superfund risk transfer site to clean it up and to make beneficial reuse of the site. So after we acquired this, we negotiated a response action with EPA, and we're under an administrative order of consent, a consent order with EPA, which essentially allows us to, one, clean up the long-term conditions on the site, which have been in place for a couple hundred years. And as part of that recovery, we're able to make beneficial reuse of the tailings which are on the site. And the good news is that those tailings, because they were mining for lead and other things around the late 1800s and early 1900s, contains a fair amount of cobalt, copper, and other metals. So as we're remediating the tailings piles that are laying on the surface, we are recovering our business plan is to recover the cobalt, copper, and nickel that are in those tailings piles. Also, when they mined the site in the past, underground, largely they ignored the veins of cobalt and copper in favor of lead. So this site, which is about 1,800 acres, is just a proverbial quote-unquote gold mine, although I call it cobalt mine, of recoverable metals, which would be very helpful to the supply chain issues that we have in the country. And also too, as we all know, with Missouri's location, this Missouri, and in particular this area of the country, and I think, Josh, there may be a slide on this with our strategic location. Yeah, it's up on the screen now. That also is our site down in Madison County. We're also very strategically located in terms of helping the supply chain. And on that map, we see all these other battery manufacturer plants that are announced or in the process of being built, or we anticipate they'll be built over the very near term. So rather than having to get cobalt from the Congo and having it processed in China and then shipped here, we aim to be able to produce the cobalt, process it, refine it, make it into a battery grade material, and supply manufacturers here in North America. As part of that, not only are we doing the mining and the processing and the floating that typically goes along with that, we've also developed a proprietary processing technique, which we're going to conduct and build on a greenfield basis. We expect that our concentrator for the tailings, which will be expanded when we go underground, opened in late 2019, and it currently operates 24/7 with over 50 people employed down in Fredericktown. We're also commissioning a hydromet plant early next year, which will produce large-scale quantities of battery-grade cobalt sulfate. And that's important because when this goes online, and the battery-grade sulfate is what goes into the batteries that go into the vehicles. So we will be the only sulfate producer in North America when we go online. And then we're also actively creating and constructing battery recycling facilities to capitalize on the domestic and foreign supply of used EV batteries. So just like the old lead acid batteries, the cobalt, nickel, lithium batteries are also going to require recycling as this goes through, and those metals can be recovered and put back into productive reuse. So we're also in the process of building and constructing battery recycling operations down there to enable that to happen. So, I mean, overall, I think when this project is up, since we've closed on this project back in 2018, we've invested close to $100 million down in Fredericktown. Our future building plans are about another $100 million of additional investment down there. We anticipate that over the course of the next couple of years that we're going to employ a couple hundred more people down there. And I will add that while, appropriately negotiating on behalf, the Department of Economic Development in Missouri has been very helpful in helping us kickstart this project with some incentives through the Missouri Works program. And working with us, we actually were able to figure out a way to monetize those Missouri Work benefits through our lenders to be able to have upfront money to kick us off about a year ago, which has been very helpful, and DED's been terrific to work with on that. I think Shad Berner and Rob Dixon, who unfortunately left us, but he's deserves a lot of credit for the work that was done down there. We've also had tremendous support through Congressman Smith's office, Senator Blunt and Hawley's office, as well as a good partnership with the EPA on helping to move this project forward and recognizing the strategic importance of this project to the overall strategic supply chain that the United States needs to support the electric vehicle operations. So that's all busy. I know it's a lot to digest here in just a few minutes, but happy to answer any questions when they pop up. And Josh, I don't know if you want to do that at the end or kick over to Joe and we'll take questions at the end, or if there are any.
Yep, I see a question. And I'd like to, let's put the pin in that and come back to it at the end for both of you, if that's okay.
That'd be great.
Great. Thank you, John.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Next up, we have Joe Maketa, Head of Integrated Supply Chain at Swift Prepared Foods. Joe's responsible for all operations, warehousing, logistics, customer service, engineering, and EHS for the organization. He has been with the company for nearly 8 years. Mr. Maketa was the lead engineer for the design construction of the Moberly, Missouri facility and provided design support and site selection support for the Columbia, Missouri facility. So, Joe, thank you very much for being here. Take it away.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Good morning, everyone. Wanted to take a few minutes again, much like John, very excited to be able to be a part of this here today and talk to you a little bit about Swift Prepared Foods and what we're doing and how we kind of got into Missouri. So John, if you hit the next, or Josh, hit the next slide. So Swift Prepared Foods, long history with the overall company. The name, we changed the name, we rebranded. When we first announced the Moberly project, our company name was Plumrose USA. When I started 8 years ago with the company, we were owned by Danish Crown. And then in 2017, we were put up for sale, and then we were acquired by JBS, which I'll talk a little bit about JBS here in a second. But as a company, in 2018, we basically rebrand. We got our new leadership team in place, and we put ourselves on a growth trajectory, and one like I certainly personally never imagined us being from where we were 8 years ago. So our focus is really protein-centric prepared foods. So a lot of lunch meat, bacon. We're getting into Italian meats. You'll hear about all that here in a moment. And other really center plate focused products that we're actually launching starting today in one of our facilities. So you can see in the lower center there, we've got 2,400 team members. We've got kind of a map of all of our locations. So we just kind of give you a broad base. We've got 2 facilities in the Council Bluffs, Iowa area. We've got a bacon facility that is attached to one of the JBS harvest facilities here in Ottumwa, Iowa. We've got a bacon plant that sits in Elkhart, Indiana, along with a distribution warehouse that sits just north of Elkhart in South Bend. We have a sliced meat plant in Boonville, Mississippi, and then a distribution warehouse in Tupelo, Mississippi, just south of that. We have the plant up in Swanton, Vermont, that is launching a new product that you'll see on Costco shelves here very soon. And they're starting that, actually started it yesterday. So I'm very excited about that. Then you'll kind of see out west, we recently just announced acquisition of Sunny Valley Smoked Meats. They have a facility out in Manteca, California that does bacon as well as spiral hams and some poultry, bulk poultry products. Recently announced, and we'll go into the 2 facilities here in Missouri, which Moberly, Missouri has been up and operational since the end of May of this year. And then we have the Columbia facility that was announced and is in construction If everything goes well, John talked a little bit about supply chain. Obviously, that's making things a challenge, but we're on track, and that's due to start up in December of 22. If you get the next slide. So we are part of JBS, which is a global food company. JBS, for those that don't know, is the #1 protein producer in the world. So and you'll see on a following slide, kind of where a little bit about them. And they are the second largest food company in the world, which is second only to Nestle in all of the products that are made. And you can kind of see all the others from the food products and where we stack up. If you hit the next slide, Josh. So JBS is a company, you can kind of see the map here, have over 60 production facilities, operate in 28 states across the country. You can kind of see where all those fall out, and their 62,000 team members. So we are very large in this space. We do a large amount of harvest facilities for beef and pork and chicken. Those are the primary proteins that we're into. Those harvest facilities then will ship to some of the case-ready facilities that will convert into ground beef or different pork cuts or whatever. On the Pilgrim side, you can see where they are. Obviously, they harvest a large number of chickens every day, and then those are generally attached to some different prepared foods, different processes that are out there. So that's a little bit about JBS. Next slide. Earlier this year, and I thought it was very relevant here. JBS announced a commitment to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030, 40% by 70% by 2040, with the goal to get to net zero. You can kind of see in the left what that really, the targets that were set out. There was a significant amount of capital investment that has been set aside for those projects that will help us. When we were kind of preparing for this, I had told John, we're the electric vehicles and things he talks about, those are all clearly in our plan at Swift, along with some other projects that we've got identified to really help us. So in order to do that, obviously in the harvest facilities and the live facilities where we grow cattle, grow pigs, grow chickens, that whole thing has a huge impact to what greenhouse gases are. Inside the Swift walls, it's really more about building in the energy efficiency. So whether it be lighting or different clean energy things that we can do, we're using those. We've got a large list of projects that are coming in for 2022 and 2023 that will really help us to do that. Then so by the same token, looking at things that we do with CO2, dry ice, minimizing that as best we can, all of those things. So on the right just kind of shows some of the key initiatives that we have. And we'll talk a little bit about what some plans are here for some of the 2 plants in Missouri. But we are currently looking at not only the projects, but even on the energy that we're buying off the grid, making sure that where it's applicable and possible that we're securing those from renewable energy resources. So that will all help us to get to our goal here. Next slide. This is just, I won't really spend a lot of time here, but you can kind of see this is the path that we have to go. So JBS is a not only a U.S. company, it's a global company. You know, the original founder of the company was actually in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and they operate really everywhere. So there's a lot of work over in Brazil around the deforestation in the Amazon and helping rebuild that to make sure that that stays intact. And overall, as a company, it's $1 billion in capital investment that they've put out there to help us achieve this by 2040. So next one. So let's get into Missouri a little bit. So the picture at the top is the new facility in Moberly. Was built and started up, like I said, in 2021. It's about 127,000 square feet. We own about 40 acres there. When we went out looking for sites, we had done some initial layout work. We knew that the plant itself, parking and all of the ancillary stuff, was going to be sitting on about 18 acres. But we also knew that with the energy consumption and the things and the processes that we're doing, because we operate currently 2 with space for 2 more 1 megawatt microwaves in there to microwave bacon. So this is the finished product here is bacon bits and then pre-cooked bacon strips. So when we went out and we were looking for locations, just to kind of summarize it for you, we had contracted with a company called the Austin Company that helped us really narrow down our site selection search. They had a lot of the things. We started with over 90 locations in the U.S. And we started vetting those things out. And it could be anything from, you know, road access to square footage. And one of the key things, obviously, that came in for us was the utility side, and, you know, what's the capacity, the availability, and all that stuff. And so that, you know, that was one of the key considerations. So as we whittled that list down, we got into negotiations. It came down to really 3 different sites, and Moberly turned out to be the winning location for this particular site. So you can see at the bottom on the right, you know, just utility spend this year will be close to $1 million. Next year will be north of $2.6 million just in utilities for keeping the lights on and operating the process. You want to hit the next one? So, you know, when we got into this, and I touched on it just a minute ago, energy costs for us were a major point that we really debated a lot internally. Really looked at a couple of things, and it was, you know, as we were whittling down and getting to the sites, it came down to the capacity that was available and cost, obviously. So the EDI incentive offered by Ameren was clearly something for us that was critical, and it really pushed Moberly over the edge. Secondly, you know, we had talked a lot with Ameren about where we were starting with the current 2 microwaves, and here's how we were going to operate, knowing that our plan, which honestly could happen sooner rather than later, because at the end of the day, when we built this facility, we had 0 sales, $75 million to build the plant was the total cost to do that. and we had 0 sales before we started up. Every pound we make is sold. So that gives you a sense for the demand. Knowing that we were where we were going to pull electricity from, we were going to be really almost maxing out with where the supply was from. And we had a commitment from Ameren, and it's underway to upgrade that infrastructure and meet the project needs, and make sure that the Moberly community was also serviced in the same way. So we had those, and that's truly those 2 or 3 bullets really are what pushed Moberly over the edge. See, and on the right, it just kind of, we've got the design considerations that we had, as we went into this and looking for some of the sites. Next slide. The Columbia plant was announced just a few months ago. Really the same process. We knew that that we were looking for a location. Labor obviously is one of the things that everybody's challenged with today, but it was that was one of the key things. And then the distribution network and all that also played in. So this site, it's about almost 3 times the size of the Moberly site. There's, doing Italian meats obviously is a lot different process than microwaving bacon or bacon bits. So it's going to require a significantly larger footprint. So this particular site, which is out in north side of Columbia, it'll be about 310,000 square feet, phase 1. We'll have, we've got a second phase planned for that will take that up to about 360,000 square feet when we're all finished. And so we went out and found 80 acres that we could put the site on. And so the pictures you see here are obviously just renderings. It's in construction as we sit today. And everything again so far is on track. So they're hanging steel and finishing a lot of the site work that needs to be worked on. So this facility will make salami, pepperoni, prosciutto, different specialty things, some copa and other Italian meats that will get distributed all across the country. So again, you can kind of see what the planned spend is there, and the consumptions for the electricity and gas that we'll be using. Next slide. So really again, same thing here. When you look at how we were, the considerations that we were looking for, the city of Columbia approved that 5-year economic development job creation rider. That helped us to improve our rate competitiveness and offset the project costs. This project, obviously a much larger facility, where Moberly was 75 million. This one's going to come in right around 200 million to get it built and up and operational. At the same time, the city council approved this standby supplemental rate, which helped us to be much more competitive and with other utilities, and it's allowing us to fund the project to do on-site cogeneration. So that will also be a part of this thing that will help with a lot of the initiatives that we talked about earlier. So without that work, this would not have been economically feasible to be in Columbia. And at the same token, the city had done a lot of work out in that area with a lot of that infrastructure that helped us to offset some of our upfront costs. Next slide. So when you talk about energy, these are the things that we really as I thought back, and been through all of this. Availability, like I talked about, is obviously critical. So we really weighed out the what we're going to consume versus what was available, making sure that we were not taxing the community that we live in. And so those were some of the larger, first considerations. And then we've really, as we've got into our net zero initiative, we're really looking at, places where we have clean energy available if we want to procure it to help us to achieve those targets. And then at the same token, in some of the locations, so we've got the cogeneration going into Columbia. We are looking at similar for Moberly, as well as we're also looking at possibly solar, because that was, again, part of the reason that we bought the way we did in Moberly was not only for expansion, so we could vertically integrate ourselves a little bit more at that location, but there was actually in the initial designs, we were looking at where we could put solar panels to help bring clean energy into that facility as well. And so we've had a great partnership as we moved down that road, and we're currently working on the solar piece of that for Moberly as we speak. The incentives that were out there, we talked a lot about that. Obviously, that is a big benefit for a lot of the considerations that we have. And then same thing, what's out there and available to help us to execute doing solar or wind or cogen type things. So, and I think that is it for me.
Thank you so much, Joe. Great to see the detail and the analysis and the partnership you had with your local utilities, 2 different utilities, in fact. John, thank you for hopping back on. We did have a question for both of you from the chat. Encourage you all to hop on and ask any others you may have. But first up for you, John, the statement is, this is a very exciting project. Is the ultimate goal to create a circular economy where there is a closed loop of raw materials that get recycled to minimize waste? And then a couple follow-ups from that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, and the short answer is yes. One of the challenges right now in the U.S. supply chain, and also that of Western Europe, is this issue of battery recycling. And there are companies out there right now that are stockpiling this material called black mass, which when you break down an old cobalt, nickel, lithium type battery, it gets reduced after you shred it, get rid of all the plastic, everything else, it gets down to this product that's a black mass. And you also get black mass from other than just EV batteries, but other type of batteries also. And then, so how do you recycle it? Because companies and stakeholders in the Western world are reluctant to turn that back over to China, where once again they control the second phase of useful life of this project. So part of our business model is building facilities where we can take and produce that black mass and recycle it back into battery materials. And it's an efficient process. And one thing I didn't point out before, but our proprietary hydrometallurgical process that we're doing is different than is being done in other places in the world, where you've probably heard the term smelters before, that tend to be very, very energy intensive and frankly pretty dirty. Our process ultimately, once it's fully developed, will be a green process. We'll be able to recover virtually everything that's in those materials. And at the end of the day, our our sole byproduct of this will be something that will be gravel and essentially product that can be used for fertilizer at the end of the day. I'm not going to get too much into the chemistry on what it is we're doing because it is proprietary, but it is a ultimately will be a green process, which also is very exciting and differentiates us from what's going on in the rest of the world.
That is really interesting, John. I think that addresses the second question they had, which was, how efficient you anticipate the process to be. It sounds like you anticipate to be very efficient. If
Correct.
you're something that is inert and reusable in a secondary market. Do you feel that you all are going to have to incentivize recycling in any way, or is that something else in the supply chain?
Yeah, no, that also is a great question to address. First of all, I think the economic incentives are there from a business perspective to recycle your batteries. So when a Tesla or whenever, a Volvo or whatever takes back the batteries at the end of the life chain when they're replacing batteries in vehicles, there's product there. But one thing that we're doing and we find in the market right now is, and I think why we will be particularly successful is when we're negotiating with companies and suppliers of this black mass, they want to see a commitment from us, which we're willing to do because we're smaller and more flexible, is to return the byproducts from that recycling back to them. So they've got the product that they need. And so from that perspective, yeah, it's not necessarily a government incentive that is out there for that, but it's part of an overall business plan. So you give us your black mass, we'll recycle it, we'll put it back into a usable format and return it to you.
That is great. Joe, we have a question for you. And the question was, does Moberly currently have cogeneration?
Right now at this time, no. It is on, we are evaluating a couple things. One is cogeneration, one is solar for that particular site.
And when you talk about cogeneration, Joe, are you talking about CHP, combined heat and power, or something else? Yes, combined heat power. All right. And are you 100% electric, or do you have any gas?
We have some gas at Moberly. Right now that's a small, it's not a large, we're not a large consumer of gas in Moberly, but we do have that.
Okay. And then the final part of that one question was, when you've looked at CHP, and I know you're not there yet, but have you looked at or considered the renewable natural gas or green hydrogen to help meet your international and national net zero goals?
Yes, we've got a team out in Greeley, Colorado, which is the corporate headquarters of JBS. So we're working with them on both of those to see, what's viable for us to be able to do that. So they are looking at all of those options.
Fantastic. Well, I hope all of you found this is both interesting and exciting. I appreciate both of you, Joe and John, for joining us today and sharing your story. I definitely look forward to working with you in the future. If there's anything that MEI can do, I definitely see a lot of partners here on the call or chat today who are going to be very interested to see your successes and to work with you. So thank you both very much. And thank you to the utilities